the tools that take us into survive, like that help us survive, are not the same tools that teach us how to thrive. The thing is, many of us weren't taught even the tools to survive. We kind of have to like figure it out to get to, past survival, but we can't seem to just figure it out when it comes to thriving. There are tools that are going to take us to the next level. And those tools aren't necessarily the same tools that got us out of survival. And so if you're in a space where you're just in survival mode and you're ready to get into the next level, it's going to require us to start really getting curious with our patterns. Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the podcast. If you haven't tuned in yet, I am doing a series called Reclaiming Worth. This is the 10th part of that series. You can catch all the other 9 episodes by going through the podcast. I've had 4 episodes released in the past 4 days, and then the other 5 part of the series I released last August. This is all in honor and celebration of my enrollment period being open for Worthy Women Rise. I am currently accepting applications through February 13th. So if what you are listening on this podcast and everything I've been sharing about reclaiming worth is of interest to you, you can go check out Worthy Women Rise at worthywomenrise.com. And if you're tuning in for the first time and you don't know who I am, well then welcome. It's such an honor that you are listening in and tuning in. I am Thais Sky. I'm the host of Reclaim. I am also a life coach. I've been life coaching since 2011, and my work is aimed at supporting women to tend to and heal their worthiness wound. And I do that through some perspectives that I think are pretty unique, which is some of the things that I've been sharing here on the podcast. And so I actually want to share with you a little snippet of something that I shared at the final closing call for my last Worthy Women Rise Women. I think it will resonate with you, and it's a little bit of why my perspective around healing and tending to the worthiness wound is a little different than most people. Check it out.
So I've been on a mission for these past 4 months. You came in with all these sorts of desires for who you wanted to be. After the end of the program, you desire to be a better version of yourself, to be more expressed, to be more of who you think you should be, right? To have embody more of the positive qualities that you cherish in yourself, as well as, let's be real here, diminish some of the qualities that you really hate about yourself. I think that's what I can say for most of us was our desires is our desire when we go into a development program of any sort. We want to better ourselves because we secretly think that if we just adopt more of the positive qualities within ourselves and reject some of the more negative, then we'll be better, happier, more fulfilled. And so I've had a secret agenda, which may be not so secret at a certain point. Maybe you've caught on that my desire is actually for you to really just embrace all of who you are. Right now, right here, the depressed, the anxiety, the fears, the doubts, the worthiness wound. Fully embrace it. Fully embrace it. All of it. Because you're the woman you've been waiting for. And we don't have time to be focused on hating ourselves. We don't have time for us to be focusing on self-annihilating behavior that we've learned since we were very little. We don't have time for that anymore because we are the woman that we've been waiting for. We are the women who are going to collectively change the world. What I'm essentially saying, right, is that we have the power within ourselves right here, right now, to be the change that we wish to be. We're here, fully here. Can we be our fullest expression here? Fully here? Can we be the woman that we've been waiting for without adding to our to-do list of ways in which we need to improve ourselves? So that's been my secret agenda. That's been my mission, for you to start to recognize and see that you're brilliant right now. Of course, you're more than welcome to continue to want to improve yourself. That's not a bad thing, to want to be better. It's just, where are you coming from in that intention? And can you embrace and recognize that Everything that's coming up in your life is because somehow it's protecting you, it's keeping you safe, it's keeping you feeling like you can navigate the world. And now we get to expand our capacity to navigate the world by internalizing some different tools.
And those different tools are the tools that I teach in Worthy Women Rise. So you see, this program is not about becoming more. It's about unlearning. It's about unlearning who we thought we should be so that we can be the woman that we've been waiting for. That was the theme of that call. We are the woman that we have been waiting for. And I truly believe that for all of us, that we are ready right now. We are ready to be the fullest expression of ourselves right now. It's not about being more. It's just about getting out of our own way. And that's what Worthy Women Rise is all about. And that's what this episode is all about. We are the woman that we have been waiting for. And in order for us to step into that woman, something that's important to recognize and understand is our patterns and how we can start to break our patterns. Because one of the things that I've seen again and again and again is that while we think that we're autonomous, we think that we're making all these like amazing autonomous decisions, so much of our lives are actually based on running the same patterns over and over and over again. Why do we do that? Well, there are a couple theories. One of the bigger ones is that we all have an inherent desire to recreate our childhood trauma. Another way to say that is to relive past wounds or keeping the trauma close, or I call it the compulsion to recreate childhood hurts. These patterns, as painful as they are, right, are an attempt to keep us safe because we know what to expect. And they verify core beliefs that we have about who we are, like that we're unlovable and that everyone will let us down. So when we begin to recognize we are playing out these patterns, when we can begin to recognize the patterns that have been playing out in our lives, healing is possible. Because the wound doesn't have to have the last say. Freedom is possible. But we have to recognize the patterns and start to unravel the patterns. Like get curious how the pattern is playing out. It's so easy for us to continue to blame the external. Oh, it's this partner that I have, or it's this job that I have. And when I change that, everything will be better. But then we do change it, and yet the same thing keeps coming up. Or we're like, when I travel the world, I'll be happy. But then we travel the world and we bring all of our shit with us, right? There's something to be said about the fact that we repeat what we don't repair. We repeat what we don't repair. And so repairing, I don't think reparations and repairing are the same words, are they? Okay, repairing our pain is the invitation. Yeah? And here's what's so wild about our patterns is that we secretly want them. This is unconscious. This is not a conscious knowing. Unconsciously, we need things in the outside world to reflect the fucked up beliefs that we have about ourselves. Because if we didn't have any evidence that our beliefs is true, then we wouldn't have our beliefs, right? So we have to find evidence. And so we look to things, we hunt them down. We look at examples for why our beliefs are valid. And so, knowing that we do this is a good thing, because then we can actually start to look out for when we do this, right? So if we know that, first off, much of the decisions that we make, much of the ways that we operate in the world comes from specific patterns. And then we see that not only are we recreating these same patterns, but actually that we kind of want to be in these same patterns. They're comfortable. They keep us kind of in this victimized place of like things are just happening to us. We get to stay safe. We don't have to push our boundaries, push our level of comfort. We get to just kind of be in the same place that we've always been. And for many of us, we kind of want that. Like, even though we say we want growth and we say we want change, what we really want is to kind of stay the same and get more, right? Like, if we could literally stay the exact same way and not change and get the perfect relationship and the perfect job and the perfect, all the things, then we wouldn't change. And that's what we ideally want. But that's not how it works. And so because now we know that we recreate our childhood pain in an attempt to get close to the trauma, in an attempt to recreate the beliefs that we have about ourselves, and that for, in some weird, unfathomable, like painful way, we kind of want these patterns to play out. When we know this, we can start to do something about it. We can start to ask ourselves, like, what is the unconscious belief, or what are the beliefs that are running this pattern? Pattern breaking is one of my favorite things. There is such a art to beginning to break patterns and find more sovereignty in our lives. And I've been doing this for so long. And part of what is beautiful about pattern breaking is that we develop intimacy with ourselves, right? We get to know ourselves more. We get to understand why we do what we do more. And we get to feel a certain sense of aliveness that we're doing it. We're finding new ways of living our lives that's more in alignment with who we want to be. I always say that, like, the tools that take us into survive, like that help us survive, are not the same tools that teach us how to thrive. The thing is, many of us weren't taught even the tools to survive. We kind of have to like figure it out to get to, past survival, but we can't seem to just figure it out when it comes to thriving. There are tools that are going to take us to the next level. And those tools aren't necessarily the same tools that got us out of survival. And so if you're in a space where you're just in survival mode and you're ready to get into the next level, it's going to require us to start really getting curious with our patterns. Now, one of the things that I know that we do, because our patterns are painful, because being triggered and activated is painful, what we do is we try to avoid being triggered. We try to avoid anything that's going to elicit an uncomfortable emotion within us, right? How many of us do this? We avoid relationships because we don't want to deal with the bullshit, right? We avoid certain foods because we know that those foods are what's going to catalyze us into binging. We kind of really constrict our lives to try to not rub up against anything that could possibly damage us or make us, uncomfortable or hurt our feelings. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like we kind of demand that no one triggers us, like no one activate us, like no one makes us confront our uncomfortable emotions. We kind of want to put bubble wrap around ourselves and never be activated or triggered again. And the thing is, when we do that, what we're doing is we're contorting our lives, we're constricting our lives so that we don't get uncomfortable. And that's not the answer either. Because what we want is we want to be expansive. We want to allow life to flow through us, both the good and the bad. And when we constrict, when we push out all of these things that don't do this and don't behave that way and don't make that happen, what we're really doing is we're saying this world is unsafe, is unsafe, is unsafe. But then we don't develop the strength necessary to feel safe within ourselves, not necessarily safe in the world. Because the world doesn't owe us to never activate us, right? The world doesn't owe us that. We owe that to ourselves by cultivating a sense of safety within ourselves, so that even if somebody activates us, it doesn't lead us into the spiral of pain. When I was in the throes of my disordered eating, one of the things that kind of perpetuated the problem was that I refused to let myself eat any chocolate. So I, never bought ice cream because I would eat the whole carton. I didn't trust myself around ice cream. Chocolate chip cookies, any type of chocolate, I would consume it immediately, so I couldn't have any of it. Pasta, I lied and said that, I don't like Italian food. That was a blatant lie. Everyone loves Italian food. The reason why I said that was because I knew that pasta was caloric. And so I really constricted my life. I led a very narrow existence where all of these foods I couldn't trust myself with. And as I started to recognize that by having all these barriers, by having all these deprivations, it was actually perpetuating the binge, I had to try something different. And so what I tried is, what would happen if I just allowed myself to eat whatever I wanted to eat? What if when I ate, I didn't shame myself for having eaten that? And this is the part of pattern breaking. We're going to go much more in depth. There's a whole chart that I have on how to break patterns. But part of what's critical to pattern breaking is to not shame ourselves for being in a pattern. So if a pattern is to binge, after the binge, to not shame myself for the binge. Because when we shame ourselves, then we feel guilty, we feel like crap, and then we want to numb out because that feels awful, and then we go into the pattern again. So shame is what keeps the pattern going around. So the more that we can remove the shame of the pattern, the better. And I talked about shame in part 6 of the series, if you want to go and check that out. But like I said in that episode, like shame can't exist in the light. And so however way you can shed light on the shame, the easier it is to break that pattern. Okay. So here's something that was interesting of a pattern that like I secretly enjoyed. I have this expectation that people aren't going to meet my needs. Like I just have this like knowing, like this feeling like people aren't going to meet my needs. So then I feel this weird sickening pleasure when they don't. I'm like, yeah, see, I knew they wouldn't meet my needs. I knew that I'm alone. I knew that it's a dog eat dog world out there and I have to figure it out on myself. The reality, though, is I kind of set them up for failure by not telling them what I need. So I kind of just assumed that they would know what I need. And then when they didn't know what I needed, I felt validated, So it only justified my belief and keeps me right where I am and unconsciously want to be and hate to be, which is to feeling isolated and alone. So do we see the pattern? I know that people aren't going to meet my needs because then I don't tell them because I kind of want them to not meet my needs because then that validates my belief that my needs aren't going to be met. It never ceases to amaze me the ways that are unconscious, like that we unconsciously contort our lives to keep the same patterns going. How we secretly want these patterns, even when they hurt us so terribly. Because we see these patterns as this like weird form of love. Like if people mistreat us the way maybe somebody in our childhood mistreated us, and as children we don't exactly know like what is appropriate actions and what's not, and we see that mistreatment as attention and as a form of love, then when we're mistreated as we're older, we see that too as a weird way of getting love. So for me, in efforts to take up space and diminish the need for this pattern to play out, first, we have to really get under the root of like why this pattern is playing out. We got to look at the worthiness wound and see how the worthiness wound is running the pattern. And then one of the things that we can do is just start to play with trying different things. Like what would happen if you asked for your needs? And so I've been playing with this radical idea of being clear and specific about what I want from people. Because clarity is the most compassionate thing we can give to those around us. Clarity is the most compassionate thing. Clarity is boundaries. Clarity is kind. Clarity is love. Letting people know exactly how you want to be treated is good. And this is the thing. Patterns aren't permanent. Sometimes we feel like we've been in this pattern for forever and therefore we are going to be in this pattern forever. No. Patterns aren't permanent. That's the good news. Our brain is plastic. We can change. It is possible. But, in order for us to do that, we have to be willing to take the risk of trying something different. So many people that I've worked with obviously come to me because of the worthiness wound, this feeling of inadequacy. And so many of them share with me that like their biggest hesitation to working with me, to signing up for the program or for doing one-on-one work is that they don't feel worthy of it. And isn't that the catch-22? Because by working with me, you're going to start to feel more worthy. But if you're believing your unworthiness, if you're believing that you are inadequate, then that is going to prevent you from taking the very action that's going to eradicate it. Why do we do that? Because a part of us secretly wants to stay feeling unworthy. We get validation from that. We get a sense of, see, the world is fucked. I knew it. And so we would rather stay unworthy than take the risk of trying something different. Because by taking that risk, what are we saying to ourselves? We're saying, I deserve the excitement, the growth, the love that I want. And that is so confronting for so many of us. So one more point that I want to make here is this beautiful concept that I've learned over the years is that the way to come home is to learn how we leave. So the way to come home to ourselves, because this, we talk about this a lot in Worthy Womanize and in my work, is to talk about the way, what coming home means. And coming home means coming into our center, coming into our most expressive, expansive parts, versions of ourselves, to like be all of who we can be, to come home. And so the way to come home is to really get clear on how we leave, how we dehumanize ourselves, how we invalidate ourselves, how we fall into unconscious patterns that keep us away from ourselves. Learning how we leave is the way to learn how to come home. This is the same that can be said in meditation. So in meditation, you're grounded in your breath, right? That's one of the anchors that you can choose, is to use your breath as an anchor. And so in meditation, you're focused on your breath, and then you leave. We all do. We go into our thoughts. We go into the to-do lists. We go into the past or the future. We get anxious. We're just like thinking about all the things. And then the invitation, the actual practice of meditation isn't to always stay with your breath, because that's impossible, really. I mean, it's very, very, very hard to do it, isn't it? If anyone's tried to meditate, it's so hard to stay with your breath. And then we give up and we're like, see, I hate meditation. I'm not good at it. Well, meditation isn't about staying with your breath 100% of the time. The human experience is not about staying worthy all the time. No. That's not the point. The point of meditation is to be compassionate on your way back home. So when you notice that you've left, to come back home and be compassionate on that journey. It's about learning about why you left in the first place. What are the thoughts that are taking you there? And then how can you come back with joy? Come back with joy means not without the judgments of, see, I knew I fucking hate meditation. This is why I suck at it, blah, 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 blah. Without that, the way to come home is to learn how we leave. The way to come home in our lives is to recognize the ways that we go off into the past, we go off into the future, and notice that pattern. Notice it, get intimate with it. Get intimate with our limitations, with the ways that we run our lives. And then we can slowly come back home with kindness. That's what I was talking about in that little snippet at the beginning of this podcast, right? Is that the coming home is not about demanding that we are better. The coming home is accepting the ways that we've left with compassion, because we're doing the best that we can, because being human is hard. And so something about, Worthy Womanize and something about the work that I do is that I'm not here to remove your defenses. I'm not here to knock your patterns. I'm not here to say, well, that's bad and wrong. Like, you shouldn't be doing that, because we're already doing that to ourselves. We don't need somebody else doing that for us. I'm not here to take away your defenses, to take away your coping strategies. Some of the ways that we learn how to see the world is necessary. Like, if we remove that, we will become so disoriented. That's why I don't like this whole idea of be yourself. If we felt safe, we would be ourselves, but we don't feel safe. And so just demanding that we're vulnerable and exposing ourselves to the world isn't the answer, because then we're going to we're going to regress way back to even earlier childhood defense mechanisms. So the answer isn't to remove the pattern. It's not to remove the defense. You may feel like that's the answer. Trust me, I know. Because so much of our defense is like, no, I want to remove it. Please help me remove it. I hear you. But instead of removing the defense, what if we fortify what feels like needs to be defended, so that you no longer need that defense? See? That's the more human way of approaching our self-development. Instead of knocking at the ways in which you try to navigate the world, how about you spend some time just fortifying who you are, cultivating emotional resiliency, expanding your capacity to be with your emotions, and then you'll find that you don't need to be as defensive, that things aren't as scary, that you don't need to put up this huge wall, that you can allow intimacy in because you've been intimate with yourself, yeah? And so the answer here is not to remove the pattern necessarily. The pattern is serving a purpose. The pattern is helping you cope in some way. The pattern is holy in some ways. So it's not about saying never do that again, like never binge again. Well, first we've got to look underneath the surface and explore what the pattern is protecting you from. And then as we get comfortable with that, and as we get comfortable with the pattern and all of the ways in which we leave, then we can learn how to come home and stay home. And as you continue to do the practice, you stay with your breath longer and longer because it's safe to do so. Yeah. So I want to end with the little meditation that I shared on the same call that the snippet at the beginning of this episode came from. It was a closing ceremony of my last Worthy Women Rise, and I led them through a little meditation called We Are the Women That We Have Been Waiting For. And I hope that this little meditation will resonate with you and comfort you and help you recognize and see just how strong and powerful and resilient and brilliant you are, because I believe in you. I believe in your humanity. I believe that you will find your way. We will all find our way. We are doing the best that we can. And can we honor that? Can we love that? Can we accept that? Because we are the women that we have been waiting for. You are the woman that you have been waiting for.
And I want all of us to close our eyes and see if we can bring that light inward. There's something so powerful about fire. It calls us for transformation. It calls us for our capacity to be so brave and so strong and so courageous. And the fire also, it reminds us of the light. The human technology that has allowed us to be where we are is because of fire, because of our ability to create fire. And that ability is within all of us, right? The capacity to create fire in our hearts. So let's truly honor the light within us, right? What is here right now. You don't have to create it, it's already here. Can you sense it? Can you feel the fire that is in your belly, that is in your heart? Right? We're all one. By you looking into the fire, you are internalizing that fire. That fire and you are now one and the same. You are the woman you've been waiting for. You do not have to wait to be saved. You do not have to wait to be brave. You are already the woman you've been waiting for. The wait is over. Time is up. There is no future and there is no past. You are here. You are one with the woman that you've been waiting for. The light within you is strong, is powerful, is guiding you, is reminding you to use the light, not to run away from your darkness, but to shed light on the darkness, because you are the woman that you've been waiting for. You have the courage, you have the power to open up the dusty closets, to clean out the corners of your heart with the light that is here, that is one in your spirit, because you are the woman you've been waiting for. There is no time in the future that will bring you salvation. Your story does not lie in your past. You are capable of everything you desire right here because you are the woman you've been waiting for. Can you feel the power in your bones? Can you feel the air in your lungs? Can you feel your body resting against the seat that you are on? Because you are the woman that you've been waiting for. Let's take a deep breath in and a deep breath out.
Thank you for being on this Reclaiming Worth journey with me. It has been such a pleasure. I am, just as I shared in the last episode, I'm definitely considering doing more Q&As and using up more air space, taking up more space in this way, sharing more of my thoughts and wisdom with you all. Your love has meant the world, and I appreciate each one of you listening in, tuning in. I do not take that for granted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And just a final call. Doors for Worthy Women Rise close this week, February 13th. So if you are interested in joining us, I deeply invite you to go to the website, worthywomenrise.com, read all about it, fill out an application, and I would love to see you on the other side. We start on Sunday for a beautiful 4-month journey of reclaiming our worth. I'm sending you all my love, and I will be back tomorrow with a beautiful interview. Talk soon.